From the observation decks of the Galactic Council Citadel, I watched the humans, tiny, fragile creatures inhabiting a pale blue sphere, spinning amidst a galaxy of stars. They should have been inconsequential, a minor blip in the vast ledger of sentient life. And yet, even from this distance, even through layers of observation protocols and remote sensing arrays, they radiated something that defied every metric, every formula, every assumption we had long relied upon. Audacity, resilience, something I could not quantify, but instinctively feared. The council gathered in its vast chamber, a cathedral of intelligence, spanning kilometers in diameter, sculpted from alloys that shimmered with iridescent light. Every delegate reflected their evolutionary heritage. The Volari, their crystalline exoskeletons refracting the council lights. The Kurth, fractal appendages pulsing with bioluminescent rhythm. The Selenari, beings of pure photonic energy, their forms flickering with every heartbeat of the chamber. Together, they represented centuries of conquest, centuries of knowledge, and centuries of supremacy. And yet, for all their experience, they too paused when human transmissions flickered across the council's sensors. I cataloged them all as they cast their votes. The assembly was precise, formal, and chillingly unanimous. Every voice, every signal, every thought aligned in a single objective. Earth would fall. Conquest was certain. Subjugation was inevitable. Their decision echoed across the chamber, filling the void with a resonance that should have been absolute. And yet, a subtle tremor passed through me, imperceptible to most, but undeniable. Even in this assembly of masters, there was hesitation. Humans were unpredictable. They had survived catastrophes that should have annihilated them, plagues that wiped out billions, collapses of societies that should have broken their civilizations, environmental disasters that should have rendered their planet uninhabitable. Here they were, thriving, persisting, growing. Their cities flickered like constellations from our orbital sensors, a mosaic of ingenuity and stubbornness. Even the smallest glimpses, the blinking of lights in their night skies, the movement of their armies, the signals of their communication networks, suggested patterns we could not anticipate. I traced our invasion protocols across the holomaps: orbital bombardments, suborbital insertion points, planetary strikes, tactical maneuvers designed to neutralize every human resistance before it could coalesce. Each scenario appeared flawless. Every simulation predicted total compliance within months, if not weeks. Entire civilizations had fallen under less sophisticated plans. And yet, even as I recorded these projections, an unease crept into my sensors. The human's very physiology confounded expectation. Frail limbs, vulnerable exoskeletons, slow metabolic rates, yet their ingenuity compensated for every weakness.
They improvised, adapted, and survived with a speed that challenged every model. In every corner of their world, I could detect sparks of innovation, structures built without uniformity, yet impervious to stress, weapons crafted from raw chaos, energy grids that rerouted themselves under duress, and behind all of it, eyes, burning with a determination that no probe could measure, no simulation could predict. Even among the council, whispers circulated, quiet, almost imperceptible, but present. Delegates who prided themselves on logic, on centuries of conquest, felt a subtle tremor. Some admitted it silently, to themselves, as a thought they could not name. What if our assumptions were wrong? What if this species, so small, so fragile, contained something we could not anticipate? Our fleets prepared in the void above. Engines glowed, weapons hummed with lethal intent. Strike crafts lined up like predatory stars, ready to descend upon the unsuspecting blue sphere. And yet, even as the council's orders rang clear, I catalogued an anomaly, a spark of potential, a force beyond any metric, beyond any calculation. Their unity, their audacity, their relentless will to survive. It was not just biology. It was something else, something almost cosmic. I reviewed historical records, countless campaigns of conquest, comparing them to this moment. Every time a species had resisted, they had broken eventually. Not the humans. They adapted, they evolved, they endured. And now, with our fleets poised to strike, I sensed the first stirrings of something dangerous. Miscalculation, misjudgment, a mistake that would haunt the histories of every species present in this chamber. I watched the humans below, their cities aglow in the twilight of their planet, unaware of the cosmic judgment passing above them. From orbit, their movements seemed chaotic. Ships navigating coastal waters, glowing streaks across their atmosphere, signals pulsing in ways our intelligence networks struggle to decode. And yet, beneath the apparent chaos was a rhythm, a cohesion we could not perceive. They were alive in a way we had never cataloged. They were alive and defiant, and that defiance unsettled me. The Council's decision was final. The vote was unanimous. Conquest would proceed. And yet, as the first orders for deployment were transmitted, engines ignited and weapons charged, I could not silence the whisper that had begun in the deepest course of my cognition. These humans were not merely survivors. They were unknowable. They were something beyond expectation. They carried a spark, wild and untamed, that no fleet, no weapon, no empire could fully extinguish. Even as we aligned our formations in the void, even as every tactical calculation appeared flawless, the humans moved beneath us, unknowing, unafraid, unbroken. And in that moment, I understood something profound. The seeds of our underestimation had been sown. Already, the shadow of doubt spread across the council.
Already, the humans were something more than we had prepared to face. Already, the first steps toward their legend had begun. And as the planet rotated below, oceans glittering, forests breathing, cities flickering with life, I realized the terrifying truth. We had underestimated them from the very beginning, and that underestimation would cost us more than we could imagine. The first assault began with a silence that was more terrifying than any roar. From the blackness above, our fleets glided into position, each ship a pinnacle of design, every weapon calibrated to extinguish the life of an entire continent in minutes. Beams of searing energy arced through the upper atmosphere, striking with precision, igniting clouds, tearing cities apart, and melting fortresses into molten ash. From orbit, the devastation was spectacular, almost beautiful in its perfection. Entire armies disintegrated before they could even react. Orbital defense platforms, some centuries old and deemed impenetrable, exploded in showers of metal and fire. We catalogued each destruction sequence with meticulous care. Our simulations had predicted these outcomes. Earth would surrender swiftly, resistance would crumble, and yet, the humans did not collapse. They adapted, even in the first moments of our assault. Civilians, farmers, students, laborers, transformed rooftops, factories, and bridges into impromptu arsenals. They scavenged fragments of our destroyed ships, fused our own technology with their crude inventions, and redeployed them against us in a matter of hours. Engineers repurposed energy conduits, rewired plasma cannons, and even rerouted small orbital satellites to intercept our drones. Entire cities became labyrinths of defense, improvised yet terrifyingly effective. We observed, cataloging, and slowly a creeping unease spread across our command decks. Their leaders, mere humans, coordinated global resistance with an uncanny precision that no simulation could predict. Commands were issued in fragmented patterns, across continents, across languages, and yet, somehow, all actions aligned. Each squad, each defense cell, acted as if guided by a single mind, a neural network spanning the planet. Even as one sector fell, another emerged to replace it. It was chaotic, irregular, and utterly effective. We deployed strike after strike, expecting compliance, and each time the humans turned our own strategies against us. Gravity-stabilized bombardments were deflected with magnetic disruptors. Orbital kinetic strikes, calibrated to vaporize entire cities, were neutralized by improvised energy shields. Entire battalions of our drones were lured into traps, destroyed by swarms of human-engineered countermeasures. Their ingenuity was relentless, terrifying, and unnatural. From my observation deck, I cataloged their every movement. They were learning faster than any species we had ever recorded.
A single failure, a single loss inflicted upon them was immediately adapted, transformed into a new strategy. What should have been defeat became opportunity, and what we had considered chaos was methodical, deliberate, and devastating. Even the civilians, children and elders, participated in ways that should have been impossible. Cities became traps, streets were mined with kinetic energy fields, ruins became launch points for improvised missiles. Factories once used for mundane production were converted into energy weapons capable of tearing through our most advanced hulls. Every corner of Earth was repurposed into a weapon, and every human contributed to it. And yet, amidst the chaos, they displayed coordination, unity, and an almost alien logic. While we assumed brute force would determine victory, they demonstrated that creativity, adaptability, and sheer will could level the playing field. Each countermeasure, each ingenious deployment, each seemingly impossible survival struck at the heart of our confidence. Our commanders whispered, quietly, in disbelief. Simulations failed. Predictive models collapsed. Strategies that had guaranteed victory for centuries faltered. Every assumption about dominance, every lesson from past campaigns was rendered obsolete by the humans' sheer unpredictability. Our technology alone would not win this war, not against creatures who could imagine solutions that no algorithm, no computer, no master strategist could anticipate. And yet, the humans did not pause. Even as cities burned, as forests collapsed under bombardment, as oceans churned with the wreckage of our attacks, they moved forward, improvising, innovating, and enduring. They were persistent, relentless, indefatigable. Their resilience radiated from their world, a pulse that reached even the void of space and stirred unease across our fleets. We had underestimated them. From the very first moments of conflict, we had assumed that power alone would secure compliance. Yet here they were, turning death into opportunity, chaos into method, improvisation into innovation. Even when despair should have crippled them, their resolve only strengthened. And as we prepared for another wave of strikes, recalibrating our weapons, reviewing our tactics, I sensed it. The humans were no longer merely defending. They were learning. They were evolving. They were adapting faster than we could anticipate, and every engagement would now carry the risk of failure. The silence between strikes was pregnant with tension. Below, the planet burned, yet the humans endured. From orbit, I could see them, tiny figures moving amidst the ruins, scavenging debris, repurposing weapons, coordinating defenses. They were frail, yes, primitive, yes, but in that fragility lay a defiance, a creativity, a will to survive that no fleet, no firepower, no calculation could extinguish.
And then the first counterstrike came. Not massive, not overwhelming, but precise, effective, and terrifying in its implications. A single human squad, armed with scavenged energy weapons, destroyed a full orbital drone wing. Our sensors calculated the odds. They should have failed. They should have died. Yet they did not. They adapted. They survived. And with that small but devastating success, a whisper of fear began to ripple across our command decks. This planet, this tiny, fragile sphere, was not merely resisting, it was fighting back. And with every adaptation, every unexpected countermeasure, every improbable survival, our certainty of victory began to crumble. The humans were more than survivors. They were predators in disguise, capable of reshaping the battlefield itself. And as our fleet regrouped, battered and confused, one truth became undeniable. The war had begun in earnest, but the humans had already taken the first step in rewriting its rules. The humans struck back, and in that moment, all certainty evaporated. What had begun as a planetary defense transformed into an organized, devastating counteroffensive. From the observation decks of our command vessels, I cataloged their actions with growing disbelief. Entire alien squadrons disappeared overnight, swallowed by traps, ambushes, and devices we could not have predicted. Wreckage from our initial assaults became weapons in their hands, repurposed with an intelligence that was almost incomprehensible. I watched small human units dismantle orbital drones using rudimentary electromagnetic pulses, improvised from salvaged satellite arrays. Entire cities fired coordinated barrages of missiles and energy projectors that obliterated supply lines before they could form. In deserts, humans lured our mechanized columns into ambushes, creating labyrinths of debris and mines that left our soldiers trapped and confused. Even the youngest humans, barely past adolescence, contributed to the defense, improvising traps and weapons that destroyed ships larger than entire city blocks. Their improvisation bordered on art, terrifying in its precision and creativity. What was most disturbing and awe-inspiring was the coordination. From distant continents, humans acted as one organism. Orders, improvised in the heat of battle, moved faster than our most advanced communication grids could predict. our fleets found themselves reacting to events that had already changed before we could respond. A counterstrike in Europe, a trap in the deserts of Africa, a blockade launched from Asia, all occurred simultaneously, all devastating, all precise. Every tactic we had prepared for was nullified by their adaptability, their unity, and their ability to exploit our mistakes. I recorded their methods, cataloged their ingenuity, and noted the patterns. They learned faster than any species we had encountered.
Each failure inflicted upon them became an immediate lesson, a strategy reshaped into a sharper, more effective countermeasure. Orbital bombardments were anticipated, kinetic strikes intercepted mid-flight. Cities once thought to be destroyed became launch points for drones. Even our communications, encrypted and shielded against interference, were repurposed by humans to coordinate their attacks against us. They were improvising faster than we could compute, faster than our algorithms could predict, faster than our fleets could respond. Their courage was incomprehensible. They faced overwhelming firepower, unimaginable technology, yet advanced without hesitation. Each human squad carried not only weapons, but determination, a will to endure, to fight, to survive, to win. They improvised, adapted, and struck with a ferocity that no simulation could model. From the sky, I saw them in ruins, yet moving with purpose, their attacks synchronizing as if guided by a single mind. Every engagement, every skirmish, left our commanders whispering in disbelief, questioning what they thought they knew about power, strategy, and victory. Our fleets, once confident, began to falter. Squadrons that had obliterated entire civilizations now fell in minutes. Commanders disappeared in blinding flashes of energy. Ships were destroyed not by direct fire but by ingenuity. Gravity traps repurposed, energy beams reflected, debris fields engineered to crush our vessels. Even our most advanced war machines, capable of planetary devastation, were reduced to burning hulks by humans whose weapons were cobbled together from fragments of our own technology. From orbit, I watched their planetary defenses evolve in real time. Cities became fortresses. Factories churned out new weapons mid-battle. Energy grids were rerouted instantly, creating shields that rendered our strikes useless. Human engineers improvised repair systems that kept critical infrastructure functional despite catastrophic damage. Entire populations participated, seamlessly blending civilian ingenuity with military strategy. It was a phenomenon beyond calculation, beyond comprehension, adaptation at a scale and speed that defied our understanding of evolution. I observed the battlefield as a living organism. Humans moved with a chaotic order that confounded all prediction. Even when isolated, they fought as if connected by instinct or some invisible network. The smallest squads inflicted disproportionate damage, using terrain, environment, and creativity to annihilate units many times their size. Forests became ambush zones, deserts traps, mountains barriers that channeled our forces into kill zones. Rivers and oceans were weaponized, tidal surges created by explosions, floating platforms launching precision strikes, coastal cities repurposed as launch points for orbital counterattacks. Every part of Earth became a weapon in their hands. And yet, for all their chaos, there was method. Every failure of ours was cataloged by them, studied, and exploited. Every tactic, every strategy, every maneuver was turned against us in hours, sometimes minutes. Even our intelligence networks, vast and sophisticated, collapsed under the speed and ingenuity of human adaptation. They were learning faster than we could anticipate, evolving faster than we could compute, and striking with precision that left our fleets reeling. Fear spread through our ranks, unspoken but undeniable. The humans, fragile and illogical in appearance, were something else entirely. They were predators disguised as prey, architects disguised as improvisers, warriors whose weapon was intelligence itself. And as their counterattacks escalated, destroying our assumption of supremacy, I realized a terrifying truth. We were no longer the hunters. We were being tested, challenged, and in some sense, hunted. Their victories were small in scale, but monumental in impact. Each destroyed ship, each annihilated battalion, each foiled strike sent ripples through our fleets, eroding morale and sowing doubt among our commanders. We had underestimated them, failed to measure their potential, and now the consequences were impossible to ignore. Their intelligence, their creativity, their will to survive, it was a force we could not model, a power we could not predict, and an energy we could not contain. And in the silence between strikes, I watched as the humans adapted again. They repaired, improvised, and prepared for the next wave with terrifying efficiency. Their unity, their courage, and their creativity were infectious, a force that radiated from the planet itself. Even from the void, I could sense it, a pulse, a rhythm of defiance and ingenuity that no weapon could extinguish. By the end of the first week of their counteroffensive, a terrifying realization had spread across our fleets. The humans were no longer defending. They were attacking. They were reshaping the battlefield, turning chaos into method, turning desperation into advantage. And every engagement, every victory, every adaptation brought them closer to something we had not anticipated: mastery. We had assumed dominance. We had assumed submission. We had assumed victory. And yet from our observation decks, we could only watch in awe, fear, and growing disbelief as the humans, fragile, illogical humans, began to dictate the terms of war itself. The humans' capacity for unity became undeniable. Where once their societies had been fractured by rivalries, ideologies, and ancient grudges, now entire continents moved as one.
Nations that had bickered for millennia pooled resources, talent, and technology, creating a planetary effort unlike any the galaxy had ever witnessed. Our intelligence networks, built to predict behavior on scales far beyond Earth's, collapsed under the sheer unpredictability of their collaboration. They were improvising faster than we could calculate, coordinating attacks across vast distances and re-engineering our own strategies against us. Entire alien fleets vanished, swallowed by devices and strategies we could not have imagined. Gravity-manipulating projectiles tore apart capital ships before they could reach orbit. Energy-absorbing shields rendered our most advanced beams useless, while swarms of autonomous drones intercepted entire battalions mid-flight. They repurposed wreckage from our previous assaults into instruments of war, transforming what we had assumed would be inert debris into lethal countermeasures. Every tactic we deployed, every strike we believed would succeed, was met with adaptation, precision, and devastating effectiveness. For my observation deck, I cataloged their innovations with a growing panic. Cities were fortified in ways that defied structural logic, with adaptive energy shields rising from improvised generators. Forests, deserts, and mountain ranges became traps and launch points, reshaped into defensive networks that we could neither predict nor penetrate. Even communication grids we thought secure were co-opted, rerouted, and used to coordinate planetary defense and counterattacks in ways our algorithms could not track. It was evolution accelerated, ingenuity magnified, and improvisation perfected. And the humans themselves, they moved with purpose, with coordination that belied their apparent chaos. Soldiers, engineers, civilians, and leaders acted as one organism, a planet-spanning neural network capable of reacting instantaneously to threats. Where we expected disarray, there was synchronization. Where we anticipated fear, there was courage. Where we predicted failure, there was adaptation. Even in the face of overwhelming firepower, they advanced, striking with precision and creativity that challenged every assumption we had made about intelligence, strategy, and survival. Fear began to spread across our fleets, not a whisper, but a chorus. Generals and commanders who had prided themselves on centuries of conquest began doubting their most basic calculations. Each human victory, though sometimes small, sent ripples through the ranks of our forces. Entire battle plans were undone within hours. We had assumed technology alone would dictate victory. The humans were proving that intellect, adaptability, and unity could render our weapons ineffective. Our fleets became reactive, constantly recalculating, constantly adjusting, yet always one step behind. Every move we made was anticipated, countered, and exploited. Our prior victories were ephemeral. Each strike we inflicted upon them became a lesson they used to strike back harder, smarter, faster. Their ability to learn in real time, to repurpose defeat into advantage, was unprecedented. The humans were rewriting the rules of warfare, and the galaxy was watching. And as I observed the planet below, I noted the irony. The species we had once deemed fragile, primitive, and predictable had become a force we could not control.
We had underestimated not only their ingenuity, but their collective will, their capacity to unify across differences, and their resilience under fire. The humans were no longer merely resisting, they were dictating the terms of engagement. By the time the first month of planetary-scale operations ended, it was undeniable. The tide had turned. The humans' ingenuity had escalated beyond anything we could predict. Entire fleets were lost to tactics and devices we had not imagined. Commanders vanished, strategies collapsed, and our confidence dissolved into fear. From my vantage point, I recorded the singular truth. We were witnessing a species that combined intelligence, resilience, and adaptability in ways the galaxy had never cataloged. And yet, even as the humans advanced, even as they reshaped the battlefield, they did so with remarkable coherence. Their attacks were measured, strategic, and devastating. They did not merely survive, they dominated the engagement. And in that dominance lay a terrifying implication. The humans were no longer a species to be conquered. They were a force to be reckoned with, a civilization whose rise was accelerating beyond any prediction, and whose ingenuity was rewriting the very calculus of galactic warfare. From the void above, I cataloged every adaptation, every maneuver, every spark of strategy that passed unseen by our fleets. And with each observation, the unease grew. For the first time in the history of our campaigns, we had met a species whose intellect and resilience rivaled our own. A species that, in the crucible of conflict, had become something more than prey. They had become architects of war itself. The humans had seized the turning point, and as I recorded the unfolding chaos of battle, I realized an undeniable truth. The war was no longer ours to win. It was theirs to define. The humans' final stand was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. From the void above, we observed entire fleets clashing in a symphony of destruction and precision, a ballet of chaos orchestrated by ingenuity rather than brute force. Ships the size of mountains erupted in firestorms, orbital bombardments collided with repurposed human defenses, and energy beams danced across the blackness like ribbons of molten light. From our observation decks, the spectacle should have signaled victory, but it did not. Cities, once thought defenseless, now served as launch points for weapons of staggering complexity.
Desert wastelands, barren by every measure, had become labyrinths of traps and ambushes, funneling our assault forces into zones of annihilation. Oceans became weapons, their tides harnessed by human-engineered devices that sent kinetic pulses capable of capsizing entire ships. Even the smallest human squads inflicted catastrophic losses. A squad armed with scavenged energy rifles and magnetic pulse grenades destroyed a strike cruiser in minutes. Entire wings of our assault fleets were lost to tactics that defied prediction, improvisation that seemed almost instinctual, and coordination that appeared beyond their physiology. From my observation post, I cataloged every maneuver. They were everywhere at once, appearing in multiple theaters simultaneously. Communications grids, previously scrambled or inaccessible, were co-opted by humans to synchronize planetary defense with orbital operations. Cities fired missiles, while orbital drones supported planetary ambushes. Coastal regions launched electromagnetic pulses, while desert squads manipulated gravity traps against approaching columns. Each action was adaptive, evolving as quickly as we could react, but always one step ahead. What was most disturbing and awe-inspiring was their use of our own technology against us. Debris from destroyed vessels was reassembled mid-battle into weaponized drones. Energy shields captured and redirected beams from our own capital ships, turning our firepower into catastrophic counterattacks. Weapons meant to annihilate swaths of their population became instruments of their ingenuity. Each miscalculation on our part amplified their power. Their coordination was terrifying. Units across continents and orbit acted in near perfect synchronization, communicating via signals that eluded every attempted interception. It was as though the planet itself had become a single entity, a network of strategy and adaptation, operating on a scale our intelligence could not comprehend. Even isolated human squads fought as though connected to the larger system, anticipating movements and countering strikes before they were fully executed. The aliens among the council whispered in disbelief. Commands that had assured victory evaporated in seconds. Entire battle formations collapsed as the humans improvised in real time, converting defeats into opportunities. Our largest warships, previously invincible in design, were destroyed not by direct assault but by tactical ingenuity.
Traps and countermeasures orchestrated by humans rendered even our most advanced fleets vulnerable. And still, they advanced. Humanity's courage and resilience seemed inexhaustible. Even as cities burned and forests collapsed, the humans adapted. They repaired, rebuilt, and redeployed with astonishing speed. Engineers repurposed destroyed infrastructure into weapons of war.
Civilians contributed to the defense, improvising technology, reinforcing fortifications, and coordinating logistics that kept the war effort moving seamlessly. Every human acted simultaneously as soldier, strategist, and innovator, and every action rippled outward, reshaping the battlefield in real time. From orbit, we watched their planetary defenses evolve with terrifying precision. Energy shields that absorbed entire waves of assault, gravity traps that tore apart capital ships mid-flight, swarms of autonomous drones that intercepted and destroyed fleets before they could reach the planet's surface. Every attempt to subdue them birthed a more effective countermeasure. Every failure we inflicted became a blueprint for victory. Their evolution was instantaneous, organic, and horrifyingly effective. Fear spread through our fleets, not as a whisper, but as a tidal wave. Commanders who had believed in centuries of conquest now questioned their own strategies. Officers who had overseen the fall of entire civilizations now found themselves outmaneuvered by humans whose physiology was, by all measures, fragile. Each lost vessel, each destroyed battalion, each failed strike eroded morale and sowed doubt. We had assumed superiority, assured dominance, but the humans were rewriting the rules, and every calculation now seemed meaningless. Even the smallest human victories had enormous impact. A single squad destroying a drone wing caused entire battalions to retreat. A city's energy shield surviving a bombardment disrupted entire orbital formations. The humans leveraged the environment as a weapon. Tidal waves, earthquakes triggered by explosions, forests repurposed as kill zones, urban landscapes reshaped into labyrinths of defense. They turned terrain into advantage, improvisation into strategy, and chaos into dominance. The psychological effect on our commanders was profound. The humans were not just resisting, they were dictating the engagement. They were predators disguised as prey, using ingenuity and audacity as their tools. And with every counterattack, the tide shifted further. Fleets that had once been confident now faltered. Squadrons vanished. Entire command structures collapsed under pressure. Our technology, our experience, our centuries of conquest all proved insufficient against the unyielding human will. In the skies, the final confrontation reached a crescendo. Orbital fleets clashed with human-launched defenses. Cities fired synchronized volleys, while coastal regions launched kinetic strikes. Deserts erupted in controlled explosions that channeled our mechanized units into lethal traps. Forests swallowed columns of troops, only for hidden squads to strike with devastating effect. The humans were everywhere, seemingly omnipresent, and every strike was precise, adaptive, and unpredictable. From my observation deck, I cataloged the collapse of our command.
Entire fleets were destroyed, commanders vanished, and ships we had considered invincible drifted in ruin. Our superiority had evaporated. What had been meant as our dominion over Earth had become a testament to human ingenuity, creativity, and resilience. Even as we retreated, battered and defeated, we could not ignore the scale of their achievement. And as the humans stood amidst the ruin of their planet, battered but unbroken, I realized the terrifying truth. They were not merely resisting, they were reshaping the logic of warfare itself. They had combined adaptation, environmental mastery, coordination, and creativity into a force that no algorithm, no fleet, no empire could predict. We had underestimated them from the start, and in doing so, we had sealed our defeat. The war had ended, not with the annihilation of humanity, but with the collapse of our own hubris. They had survived the unimaginable. They had turned despair into strategy, chaos into order, and survival into dominance. And from my vantage, cataloging every maneuver, every adaptation, every act of ingenuity, I understood a singular truth. The humans were not just a species, they were a phenomenon. They had become a force the galaxy would remember, a species that could survive the might of entire civilizations, that could outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast powers far beyond their scale. They had achieved the impossible,
and in doing so, they had rewritten the hierarchy of existence. The humans had survived the unimaginable. Entire fleets had been shattered, their planet had burned, yet they remained unbroken. From the observation decks of the retreating alien forces, I cataloged what no historical data could have prepared me for. They held the power to annihilate us entirely, and chose not to. From orbit, it was breathtaking to observe. The cities, battered but intact, glowed with renewed life. Forests, deserts, oceans, all scarred from the conflict, were teeming with adaptation and regeneration. Humanity moved with purpose, repairing infrastructure, salvaging technology, and coordinating relief efforts across continents with a precision that was almost mechanical, yet deeply humane. And yet, even amidst their own survival, they reached out to the defeated, the conquered, and the would-be oppressors. Entire species that had voted to enslave Earth now bowed in humility before humanity's unexpected benevolence. The Volari fleets, their crystalline hulls cracked and smoking, were offered sanctuary. The Kreth, whose fractal appendages had once plotted domination, were extended reparations. Even the Selenari, photonic beings who had underestimated the human will, were aided in reconstructing their technology and fleets. No demand for tribute, no assertion of dominance, only mercy, only guidance, only an unexpected moral authority that none of us had seen before.
From my vantage, I observed an extraordinary paradox. Creatures capable of annihilation, yet guided by principles beyond mere survival. Empathy, morality, justice, unyielding restraint. The human's mercy was not weakness, it was strength multiplied, a demonstration of power disciplined by intellect and conscience. Where we would have demanded obedience, they offered alliance. Where we would have sought revenge, they extended reconciliation. And the lesson spread. Across the galaxy, we witnessed reverence bloom in the minds of species that had once plotted Earth's destruction. News of humanity's restraint traveled faster than our communications, igniting awe, fear, and a grudging respect. Delegates who had once prided themselves on logic and conquest found themselves reconsidering their own assumptions, their own hierarchies, and their own definitions of power. Humanity had demonstrated that the apex of intelligence was not merely the ability to destroy, but to temper strength with wisdom. Even the humans' enemies, those who had inflicted pain and suffering, were given opportunity to learn, adapt, and grow. Where we expected reprisal, they offered education. Where we expected retaliation, they offered technology and guidance. Their actions were deliberate, measured, and meticulously calculated to establish order without oppression. In doing so, they redefined the concept of power itself. I cataloged every interaction, every humanitarian effort, every calculated act of mercy. The humans' choices were strategic as much as they were moral. They had demonstrated dominance not through annihilation, but through restraint, compelling respect without coercion. Across species, across galaxies, across centuries, no precedent existed for such a combination of intelligence, resilience, and conscience. Their mercy also sent a warning. No civilization should mistake their fragility for weakness. They were small, yet indomitable. Their bodies were fragile, but their minds were unassailable. Their empathy was not a flaw, it was an extension of their strength. We had assumed that vulnerability would render them submissive. Instead, it had forged them into a species capable of reshaping galactic norms. From the observation decks, I watched the alien fleets retreat, humbled and wary. Some species sought to negotiate treaties, others simply fled, unwilling to test the humans' patience or ingenuity. Humanity did not pursue vengeance. They had already made their point. They had demonstrated that intelligence tempered by conscience could eclipse even the most technologically superior civilizations. And as I recorded the final sequences of the war, I noted something profound. The humans' legacy had begun. Across countless worlds, across species that had once dismissed them, stories spread like wildfire. Tales of survival against impossible odds, of ingenuity that defied calculation, and of mercy that redefined power. The galaxy began to reconsider its hierarchy. Humanity was no longer a mere planet, a minor species, or a fragile race. They had become a standard by which all others would be measured. Even from our retreating fleets, the humans' presence dominated thought. Their actions had created a new paradigm that the apex species could combine survival, intelligence, creativity, and morality into a force that transcended traditional notions of power. They had turned weakness into strength, fragility into influence, and compassion into authority. And in that final observation, I understood something that would haunt every cataloged record, every analysis, every strategic simulation. Humanity was not merely a species to be feared, they were to be revered. They had survived the impossible. They had outthought, outlasted, and outmoralized entire civilizations.
and they had done it not with domination, but with restraint. From Earth, the planet itself seemed to pulse with life. Cities rebuilt, forests regenerated, oceans churned with energy. And in every corner of the planet, humans moved with the quiet confidence of beings who knew their worth, not through conquest, not through destruction, but through courage, intelligence, and conscience. Their mercy was absolute, their authority undeniable, and their legend eternal. And so, from the observation decks of the defeated, I recorded the final truth. We had faced a species unlike any before, one that combined intelligence, ingenuity, resilience, and morality in perfect harmony. One that had survived impossible odds and emerged not only unbroken, but exalted. Humanity's mercy was their ultimate weapon, their defining mark, and their greatest lesson to the galaxy. Strength without conscience is empty, but conscience tempered by strength is absolute. The humans had triumphed, and the galaxy would never forget.